Hello friends, welcome to day 8 of the 12 days of Christmas. In this video, we are going to make a Christmas morning sunrise tumbler. So I'm going to start out with my 30-ounce skinny straight tumbler, and I'm going to do the quick glitter method with epoxy. So I've got about 30 milliliters of my Flynn Sisters Supply Shop Fast Cure epoxy here, and I'm going to mix in some Supernova from Peachy Olive Glitters. You can use any fine cut white glitter that you want for this technique. It really doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do is spread that all over my tumbler, and once I've got that on and it's nice and smooth and even, I'm going to take Phantom, also from Peachy Olive Glitters, and sprinkle that all over the tumbler just to add some dimension. Phantom is like a mini chunky, so when you put it with that fine cut, it's just going to add an additional layer of depth. But if you don't want to do that step, you absolutely don't have to. If you want to just go in with the fine cut glitter, that's totally fine. Get it? Fine cut glitter, fine. I don't know. I have jokes. All right, so once that epoxy is cured, you're going to add another layer of just plain epoxy over all of that glitter to make sure that everything is nice and smooth and ready for all of our vinyl work and alcohol inks and everything that we're going to put on top. The first thing we're going to add is our first tree line. This I cut out of plain black, like regular permanent vinyl, and I'm going to wrap this around the tumbler kind of like in the middle. This is going to be very, very background, so I made it kind of large because you want to be able to see it when you add all of your layers in front of it. I just measured really the width around my tumbler after adding the glitter and the epoxy and made it that wide around, and that ended up being tall enough as well. But if you need to, you can always kind of stretch out the trees a little bit to make it a little taller if you need some more height. I'm going to add another thin layer of epoxy to my tumbler after adding that tree line down because I'm going to do some different layers and stuff with tape. I didn't want to risk ruining that tree line decal that we just put down, so I just put another coat of epoxy over it. So what I'm going to do next is take my thick painter's tape and I'm going to wrap it around the bottom area of the tree line. You can see I've left just a tiny little bit below the tape, but what I'm going to do is cut out very roughly a little like hillside in the front of our trees. Now this is really not going to show that much in the grand scheme of things in the end, but I do think it adds a lot of depth to your design. You will see it a little bit peeking through once we've got all the layers on. But if you are looking to like eliminate a step from this design, this is the one I would say that you could probably go without and still have a really nice end result. But I like to add it just as another additional layer of dimension. So what I'm doing here with my Sharpie is very roughly like sketching out where my little hillside or rocks or mountain or whatever you want to call it, how it's going to go around the tumbler. I'm just trying to vary the height, make it look very rough and obviously very natural looking. And once I'm done kind of sketching it out, I'll take my craft knife and I'll follow that line, not exactly, but I will use it as a guide. And then I'll remove the bottom portion of the tape and leave the top masked off. I'm going to paint this bottom area of my tumbler using some gray acrylic paints that I have. We are going to go over this with some alcohol ink later though, so it really doesn't matter what color you paint this. You can use gray, brown, even white if you wanted to, because we're going to do a brown alcohol ink to make it look more like mountainous, like dirt and rock and that kind of thing. So if you've got gray, great. If you have white, great. Whatever color you have is fine. I just wouldn't do black, obviously, because that's what the background trees are, and you want this to stand out from that a little bit. You want to let your paint dry for about 30 minutes, and then we'll go in with another coat of epoxy. Now, I did one thin coat, and then I did another coat, and in that second coat is where we're going to add all of our alcohol inks. You don't have to do 2 separate coats. You can just put all of your inks and stuff in the first coat over the paint, but I was going to try something different, so I epoxied, thought I was going to try something else with the design, and then decided, no, I'm going to stick with my original plan. So then I went back in with this second coat of epoxy so that I can do all of our alcohol inks. For the alcohol inks and the epoxy, I am using the Artist Cure epoxy from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. I would not recommend trying to do this with a fast setting epoxy. You will not have enough working time and it'll just be a nightmare. So definitely use a regular setting epoxy. You want to give yourself plenty of time to mix up your inks, have your epoxy spin a little, touch it up, and fast set just won't give you that time. So I've got my alcohol inks laid out here. I have a couple like dark blues and turquoise colors. I have yellow, a bright pink, and then I have brown. And I've got about 5-ish milliliters of epoxy in each of my little medicine cups. And then I'm going to mix a couple drops of the alcohol ink into their own medicine cup with the epoxy. I'm going to put a thin coat of just plain regular epoxy on the tumbler first. That's going to help all of the inks flow really nicely. We're going to get some really nice movement there. And this coat is probably like 15 to 20 milliliters of just plain epoxy in that first layer. And then we'll of course add more when we do the alcohol ink. So you don't want that plain coat to be too thick, because then you'll just have like way too much epoxy on your tumbler and it'll be really thick and almost like gloopy feeling. I don't know. So I'm going to put that coat on, let my cup spin for about 5 minutes, and then we'll get into adding all of the alcohol inks and really bringing this whole thing to life. Now, when I'm applying my inks to my tumbler, I'm going to start with my lightest color first, which is obviously my yellow, and then I'm going to work my way up the tumbler, moving into that dark blue that we've got. So with the yellow, I'm going to go right at the middle of the tree line. When I'm doing all of these colorful inks, I'm avoiding that bottom gray portion where like the rocks are going to be. That is purely just going to be brown alcohol ink. We're just going to kind of tint that with the ink just to add some dimension. And then the colorful part will be like the sun rising from behind the trees, if that makes sense. That's kind of the look we're going for here. So once I've got my yellow on, I'm going to go in with my pink, and I'm going to put that right underneath where we put the yellow. And when we put these together, red and yellow mixed to make orange. So we're going to get a little bit of a nice like peachy tone, which I think is really pretty. Now, really what I could have done is gone like yellow to pink and then to blue. It really doesn't matter. The sun is rising, the sun is setting, whatever you want it to be is totally fine. But I'm going to do the pink underneath the yellow, and then we'll move into our lighter turquoise, and then finally the dark blue up at the very top of the tumbler. And as I'm applying these, I am trying to blend them just a little bit. I don't want to blend them so much that things get like muddy, but I do want to blend them so it just looks like a really nice sunrise or sunset, whatever, scene from behind the trees. So I'm putting a little bit of the ink on, kind of blending it with the colors next to it, but not fiddling with it too much, because as it spins, the epoxy is going to move around a little anyway, and it's going to do a lot of the work for us. So really all we need to do is get the color on there, and then the tumbler spinning with the epoxy will really like get that nice movement that we're looking for. Now, because I am a glitter girly, I'm going to add a little bit of extra glitter to this layer of epoxy. I'm going to take Bright from Peachy Olive Glitters, and very lightly, I'm just going to sprinkle the top portion of our cup, like where that tree line starts. I wanted this background layer of trees to have a little bit of sparkle on them, so I'm just really focusing the glitter on those black trees to give them some extra shine. And of course the glitter is going to go into the sky area too, which is totally fine. I'm really just avoiding that bottom brown portion, just because that's going to get covered up and we don't really even need the glitter down there. Of course, if you get some down there, as you can see that I'm doing right now, it's not a big deal. It's totally fine. And also, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But I like the little bit of extra sparkle that the trees have. It makes it look like it's like a peekaboo almost, or like we glittered the vinyl somehow. It just gives it that extra little sparkle, you know, which I really, really love. Once that layer of epoxy is cured, we can move on to our next layer of trees. So I cut out the exact same tree line, and this time I cut it out of the colorful pearl white vinyl from TECKWRAP Craft, and I made the tree line just a smidgen wider than the first cut we did to account for that extra epoxy that we now have on the tumbler. I'm not going to line these trees up exactly with their like matching tree because I want the black trees obviously to show from behind the white trees, so I don't want to line the shapes up perfectly because that would hide too much of the background trees. So I'm going to use some parchment paper underneath my vinyl so that I can see through and see where those black trees are on our tumbler so that I can line everything up and make sure that it's going to look good with those two layers of trees. So now that those trees are on, you can kind of see what I mean by you'll just see a little bit of that hillside like peeking through this other layer of trees. So again, if that's a step you want to skip, you absolutely can, but it does leave a little bit of depth between those two layers of trees. So I always like to add that little hillside in. So what I'm going to do next is go right into my next layer of vinyl. Now this is a little winter scene that I put together using a file pack from Creative Fabrica. All of these little scenes come in the same pack, and I just took a couple and laid them next to each other so that I could cut out one long piece that'll wrap all the way around the cup. And I'm going to put this down towards the very bottom of the tumbler. I'm going to leave maybe like a ½ inch underneath this, and what I'm going to do once I have the vinyl on is take a black Posca paint pen and just color everything that's underneath the bottom edge of that vinyl. I'll color it black so that we have a nice like dark silhouette flow all the way down around the bottom of the cup. After all that paint has dried down at the bottom, we can add another coat of epoxy. I'm still using the Flynn Sisters Supply Shop Artist Cure epoxy here, and I'm going to add about 20 to 25 milliliters in this coat. Once this coat is cured, we can add our final little detail. I wanted to add Santa flying in the sky because this is like the sunrise on Christmas morning. Santa Claus is finishing up his deliveries. He delivered to this last little house out in the forest. That's like my little fairy tale story for this tumbler design. So I found an image of the moon on Google, and I'm gonna cut that out and just put it in the sky, and then I'll put Santa and his reindeer kind of like flying over the moon in that little, traditional kind of look that we always see. Once that's on, we can go right into our final coat of epoxy, and then we will be all done with this design. I really hope you all enjoyed this tutorial. This was a really fun design to put together, super fun to make, and I hope you all like the cup design. If you enjoyed the video and you like the tumbler, please be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you're enjoying the 12 days of Christmas so far. We've got 4 more videos to go, so stay tuned. We've got a lot of fun coming your way. All right. Thanks again for watching. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Love you. Bye.